ever felt like you didn't fit in? Like you didn't belong, like maybe there was something wrong with you, or you were born in the wrong generation? Yeah, that was my childhood. I was that kid that never quite fit in. I mean, it started out okay. I had friends and I was making it work. I mean, aside from the two imaginary friends that I had as a little kid, but I grew out of those. But the thing is that my family moved around a lot. And when I was in the middle of second grade, all of a sudden we moved from one state to another. And for the first time in my life, I was made to feel different. To begin with, even though I was fine in the other state, when we moved to the second state, I was behind apparently in reading. So they sent me down to the kindergarten classroom. And I remember being a bigger kid sitting in those little kindergarten chairs at the table. And then on top of it, I guess I was so far advanced in math that they would just remove me from the classroom at math time. So I would go down to the special ed classroom and I would play Candyland with a little boy named David every day and just do my homework at home on my own. But it was the first time in my life where I felt different. And then to top it off, the teacher I had written my parents a note basically telling them that I was socially awkward and that she felt like I liked being alone, maybe. I don't know why she wasn't able to connect the dots that I just didn't know anyone in the class because I seemed to be out of class more than I was in class. But from there, it just seemed to progress. And by the time I hit fourth grade, all of a sudden I became the ugly duckling. I was that kid who gained a tremendous amount of weight. To top it off, I ended up with glasses and then braces, and I was a target. And for the first time, like really for the first time, I felt awful. I started to shut down. I started to pull in more. I had a crush on a kid up the street who was my friend's brother. Well, he decided, even though he was nice to my face, he decided to write a song about me called Moo Moo the Cow, which he taught to the kids in the neighborhood. And then if I'd get in a car, he would ask if I was going to Weight Watchers. Isn't that nice? Anyway, I just kept withdrawing more and more. I kept pulling inside more and more. Have you ever felt like that, where you feel like an outcast and you just pull within? Well, that's what happened. And from there, then what happened was that I had to find my outlets, because we all have to have some kind of outlet, right? And so the first one was that I had one friend that I would play with across the street who was my friend, who I felt safe with. But she was into things, a lot of times she wanted to play like Barbies and stuff, and that wasn't really my thing. I didn't really care for Barbies. I mean, I'd play with them to be around her, but it wasn't really my thing. And then my dad had bought this big, beautiful mural that was in the shape of a keyhole, and within it was like the Garden of Eden. And so all of the animals, it had like animals of all different species, and they were all getting along, with Eve sitting there by a waterfall with, I think her foot was in the water. And I used to get transformed into that mural. I longed so badly to climb into it. I used to like try to put my hand into it. And I was like, if I pray hard enough, maybe I could just slide into it. And the thing I remember the most about it was I spent hours just staring at the animals' eyes. And they were so gentle, the way the artist had painted them. And they were so kind. And so, I don't know, they just seemed so generously full of love. And I loved just sitting there and just sitting by that mural and just watching it. And watching it to see if anybody would move inside of it. And then maybe I could get in. But that was another outlet for me. And the third outlet that I had was that I used to, now I grew up in a generation where we had strong women. okay? We had the Bionic Woman. We had Charlie's Angels. But I would look at them and they looked nothing like me. I wasn't beautiful and I wasn't stick thin. And that's all the women looked the same to me. They were all like super beautiful, super stick thin. And the only one that I felt like I could possibly relate to was Wonder Woman. And the reason for it was because they had hired an actor who had a chest, and she had, even now when I look at her, I see how tiny her waist was. But back then, all I saw was that she had shoulders, and then she went in at the waist, and then she went back out at the hips. She had an hourglass figure. And I knew, looking at my family history and stuff, that's probably what I was going to end up looking like as I got older. And I mean, I had already started developing parts of my body. And so what happened was, because I couldn't rely on other TV shows, I couldn't rely on magazines, I couldn't rely on billboards. They all were of these super glamorous, super thin, airbrushed, beautiful people. I ended up getting addicted to old movies, old musicals specifically. All I wanted to watch were things that had people like Rosemary Clooney in it. Had Rosemary Clooney, had Marilyn Monroe, had the dancer, Ann Miller. She was another one of my absolute favorites. And I would just watch those over and over and over. And then, of course, my crush became like Gene Kelly, the nicest guy in the world, who was super talented and just charismatic, and loved him. And I used to imagine that I was born in the wrong generation, that I didn't belong anywhere where I was, that I needed to go back in time. But something else happened when I was in 4th grade. My 4th grade teacher, Miss Sheldon, put on a play, and it was the first play I had ever been in. Aside from like the little tiny ones, I had done a couple little productions that I had created where I'd gotten a couple of the kids to like be in it with me, and we put them on for our parents. But this was the first time it was like a real play, and it was called Mystery of the Gumdrop Dragon, and I got cast as Lady Lemondrop, and I was devastated, like just devastated. I mean, to the point where I was basically tearing up. I wanted to be the princess like everyone else. And of course, the most popular girl in class was the princess. But that teacher did something for me that was so important and that made me feel so special. She pulled me aside and she explained to me that when she had been casting this production, that she could have cast any of the kids in any of the roles. She said, but the one that she had trouble with was my character, because she felt like I was the only one that could pull it off. I didn't know what that meant at the time. But what I did know was that somebody, an adult, had taken time and made me feel special. And she had explained this to me. And later on, I learned what that meant, because when we went into that production, the curtains opened. The parents were there. It was put on at the high school, so we had a big stage. And I did my line, and everybody laughed. And at first, I just was devastated. I'm like, oh my God, they're laughing at me. But I don't know, something clicked inside of me. While that laughter was happening, all of a sudden, something clicked to me when I went, they're not laughing at me. They're laughing at what I'm saying. They're laughing at my character. And it made me feel okay. It made me feel special. It made me feel like, hey, it's okay. They're not laughing at how I look or how I talk or what's going on with me. And from there, what happened was that the next city over, the university had put on a production of Oliver. And I remember getting ready for that audition, and I did the song Consider Yourself, and I was all pumped up and I was ready to go, and we get there, and I've never seen such a long line of kids in my entire life. It went all the way through the auditorium, out along the sidewalk, so we were in line. But we got up to the front eventually. I auditioned for it. they were only casting like 15 to 20 kids. They told us that up front. And I happened to land one of the roles of the Street House Kids. And that production changed my life. Because within that production was a man named Patrick Page, and he was cast as Fagin. And I used to beg, and when I say beg, I mean beg my parents and the other woman from the town who would drive us over there for rehearsals. I would beg to get there early. And I would sit next to him and I would watch him transform every single day into Fagin. I'd watch him put on the prosthetics. I'd watch him put on the makeup. I'd watch him put on his costume, the way he walked, the way he talked. He completely changed. And I knew, I don't know, there was like an aha moment where I just went, oh my God, that's what I want to do with my life. I didn't have any clue. I was like, you can't make money at it. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know. Like all these thoughts hit me at once, but I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And that was one of the 3 moments. I had like 3 pivotal moments where I knew what my calling in life was. And that was the first one. And from there, I started landing other productions and I was building up my confidence. I was flourishing. And even though I still had braces, I still had glasses, I still had the weight, I was transforming. I was transforming within. And I was becoming whole as a kid, and I was finding my identity in the place where I belonged, in the place where I felt were like my people. But something else happened because, like I said, we moved a lot. And from that town that we lived in, we moved 2 more times. We moved, well, in that time period, we moved 2 more times. And I ended up back in the same place where I had gained the weight, where like I was going through the trauma basically. And it was 8th grade and I was at the junior high school there, and I have never felt so excluded in my life. I didn't fit in with the kids. I didn't really get along. It wasn't that I didn't get along. I just didn't know them. They didn't feel very welcoming. It was very cliquish, which you can imagine in a junior high school. So my hideaway became the library. I started, I got that as my extracurricular activity that we were allowed. I joined the library, and any chance that we had breaks or we had anything like breaks or periods within, I would run to the library and I'd hide out in the library and I'd help the librarian and I'd file books and do all that stuff. And then I would get to look through the magazines and I get to read the books and get lost in the books. And that became my outlet. Well, from there, I went to high school, and of course I was with many of the same kids. And to top it off, our high school was notorious with our drama department for casting the same kids in everything. So I started shutting, like I just kept shutting down again and shutting down again and getting small and getting small. And if I was at home and I was singing or dancing, I was frequently told to be quiet, to stop making noise. And I don't know, I just fell like into that box, that little safe box. My best friends became the ceiling and the floor. And I started looking for other things that I could do because I had developed the worst stage fright I had ever felt in my entire life. My knees were buckling. My face was, I was perspiring everywhere. It was awful. My voice would shake, and it didn't matter if I was singing or I was talking. It was the same across the board. So I started looking for other outlets. But the one saving grace that I had during that time was that when I had turned 13, my mom had converted to Judaism, and she had developed this group. She had this group of women that used to come over, especially when I was in high school. And they were so magical. They were fun. They were loud. They weren't told to be quiet. They were loud. They were laughing. They were full of so much life and so much joy. And it was so beautiful, especially as a kid who had shut down. And oh my gosh, between them and the health teacher in high school, not even the drama, but the health teacher who started helping me find my identity and who helped me build my confidence back up and get into a lot of volunteering opportunities so I could get out of myself, I started to come back to life. There is nothing like the arts for kids that feel traumatized or that shut down. And it was just so amazing. And I will forever be grateful to those few beautiful souls who came into my life and who helped me to rebuild my confidence and to find myself. And oh my gosh, let me tell you about the Jewish women.